confidence isn't just that person who has to be the center of attention, the person who walks into a room and lights up the room. That is one version of confidence, but that's not what I am doing work to help people with. Because to be honest, not many people want that. They don't want to be the center of attention. They just want to be able to stand up for themselves and be able to, I guess, hold their own in a space. And so for me, in the work that I do with people around their confidence, it's helping them to realize the value that they have and learn to communicate that in a way that then can help them to get results.
Hi, welcome all to another impactful episode with me, Amit Khanna, on Communicate with Impact. I have my lovely guest today, Janelle from New Zealand. Hi, Janelle. How are you doing today?
Hi, Amit. I'm doing so well. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on this morning.
Thank you very much for coming to my show and, blessing with your wisdom and knowledge to all the people. Now, Janelle has a very lovely, interesting career path. And, let her speak about it. Janelle, over to you.
For sure. So yes, my name is Janelle. I'm from New Zealand and I currently am self-employed. I am a confidence coach and I help people to progress their career by developing and growing their own sense of self-confidence. And I've been doing coaching since 2016, but I found coaching, I suppose, from a bit of a hole that was in my life where I had a full-time job and I actually used to work in radio. So I worked in the media here in New Zealand and I'd been doing that for a few years. And as the years went by, I just got less and less inspired and motivated by what I was doing. And at the time, I was working 5 a.m. until 1 p.m. And so the whole rest of the afternoon was up to me to do whatever I wanted. And I'd moved to this small town where I knew absolutely no one. Sometimes you have to do that in radio, you got to move where the jobs are. So I moved to the small town. I knew nobody. There wasn't very much to do there. And so that is when I ended up spending a lot of time online on the internet, learning and researching. And I had a massive passion and still do for personal development, being the best person that I can be. And so I would always be listening to podcasts, reading books, all that good stuff. And then one day I decided, I'm going to train in this. And so while I was working full time in radio, I then did a 1-year course to become essentially a life coach. And through doing that work, I then loved it so much that now I've been able to make it my full-time role, which I'm so grateful for. And it just makes me so happy being able to connect with people and help them to release the areas where they're stuck and help them to overcome some barriers and hurdles so that they can move forward in their life with confidence and also with, direction, because there's so many of us out there who are just living each day and not really having enthusiasm or any form of content behind what we're doing. We're just kind of like waking up and doing it, because that's what we feel like we have to do. But there is so much more out there. So that's just a little bit about my story. And yeah, I'm really excited to be talking even more today.
Wow. That's quite interesting. And just for all the users to know, I'm going to share the link for her website as well, where you'll find more information about what she does, several programs that she runs as well when it comes to career coaching. Absolutely. And goal setting and so on and so forth. I was actually, since the time we met the first time, I was actually surfing your website and, getting to know more about you. And it's quite interesting. And some of the reviews, I saw some of the testimonials as well, where you created certain impact to others in terms of confidence. Let's talk about it more now.
Yeah, sure.
Let's start with the basic thing, like how do you define confidence?
Confidence is definitely an internal thing for sure. And, it's something that you can externally see in some people. Sometimes you might be having a conversation about a coworker and you might think or say out loud, they're really confident. It doesn't have to be that. Confidence isn't just that person who has to be the center of attention, the person who walks into a room and lights up the room. That is one version of confidence, but that's not what I am doing work to help people with, because to be honest, not many people want that. They don't want to be the center of attention. They just want to be able to stand up for themselves and be able to, I guess, hold their own in a space. And so for me, in the work that I do with people around their confidence, it's helping them to realize the value that they have and learn to communicate that in a way that then can help them to get results. So for instance, one of my clients, when we first started working together, she was crying every single day before work because she, in her head, had made her boss, her manager, this person who was above her, this person on a pedestal. And so she had somehow freaked herself out so much that she was in this state of such low self-confidence that she felt like every single thing she was doing at work was wrong. And so when we started working together, I would talk to her a lot about the different scenarios in work. And within 6 weeks, what we were able to get her to do is, one, to stop crying every day, thank goodness. But two, she also went for a promotion because her manager was actually going away on maternity leave. So I told her, why can't you step in for the manager? Her boss wanted to hire externally. That means training somebody else. That means adding even more budget to the team and a lot of time. There's quite a big workload in hiring a new person in from external. And so I talked her through, what about this for yourself? And what we did is we did a lot of work on helping her to communicate her value that she brings to the role and also her determination in wanting this new role. And we did a little bit of role play together because I think that is great. If you're ever nervous about stuff, pretend, do some acting, have a little bit of a role play about it. And then she went and spoke to her boss. She sent me a voice message afterwards saying, oh my God, I did it and I got the promotion, and she isn't the person that walks into the room and everybody stops and looks at her and thinks, oh my gosh, she's so confident, but she was able to show her value to her big boss enough to be able to get herself a promotion, which came with, this new manager title and a pretty tidy pay rise too.
Fantastic. That's one of the interesting things that you just mentioned as well, is because I completely agree or understand this, that when we see confident, we feel that the person, like, for example, the person who's coming in is beaming with confidence. Like there's a sort of a radiations coming out of that person that showcases that he or she is confident. You pointed out really, really well that, yes, that is one aspect of it, but there are people who do not probably want to radiate it, but they still have confidence. There's many ways to showcase it. So if you don't mind asking me, what are your clienteles look like? Like, where are they? What types of people you deal with?
This is such an interesting question. So at the moment, I mostly work with women. And that was by choice because for the past few years, I developed specific training and workshop that was focused at women. And so naturally, some of those people have become my one-on-one clients. So I have a really interesting range where initially when I first started my business, for some reason at that time I was in my mid-20s and I just had this idea that the people who would work with me would also be in their mid-20s, would be on the same vibe. But the reality is, and what I learned really quickly, is that I was quite above my years and the people who gravitated towards me were much older. So I have clients who in their 40s. Some of them even have grown-up children who have their own lives. Some of them are grandparents now, and they are realizing this new lease on life, and they've been, I guess, going through the motions for the past 15, 20 years of doing, like I said earlier, those things they feel they have to in life. And now they're realizing, you know what? No, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to live my life in a way that's going to make me feel good. And so I have a lot of clients like that, which is just so fun working with them, because they've had a lot of time doing things a certain way, and now everything is new to them. So half the stuff they're seeing with fresh eyes and excitement, and then the other half the stuff they're seeing with those fresh eyes and really big nervousness and fears. And so I love working with my clients to overcome that stuff. I trained as an NLP practitioner, and so I've got NLP techniques that I can use to help people when they really, really need it. Although the general coaching that I do is usually enough, but it is nice to know that if there's someone who is just really fearful or has really deep limiting beliefs about something, that we can work on those and release those through NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. And so that's the majority of my clients. They are still working, but I also have a mix of clients who are stepping into starting their own businesses. And the reason why these people work with me is that while I was in radio, essentially what you're doing is you're employed to help promote and market other people's businesses. That's what you're doing on the radio, right? And at the same time, I also got really involved in community initiatives. And in the small town in New Zealand where I was living, it had a really strong emphasis on entrepreneurship. And so I would spend my outside of work hours, one, studying my coaching course, and then two, doing a lot of community involvement around helping people who wanted to start their own businesses. So naturally now that's just part of my skill set, in which I work with clients, I help them on their self-confidence, and then sometimes that means they then want to go and turn an idea that they've always had into a business, and so I get to have a lot of fun helping women with that. But then there's also those people who just want to double down on their career and really have a vision for what they see for their future in terms of, say, an organization, and I help them with that as well. So it's really nice. Like every single day for me is different, and it's exciting, and I love it so much.
It's not just one area of clients that you're working with.
Yeah.
It's corporates, it's 9-to-5 goers, it's business startups and others. It is exciting for sure. And the more exciting part is that when you mentioned that, how it's just a thought that came in, that many times people take a lot of time in their life to know that what I'm doing, there are alternate ways, and I don't have to be like this all my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only thing is that they have to just come out of first they have to accept that, I need a change. Second is come out and seek person like you that, hey, I need help, and, work with you. So it's quite interesting.
Well, it is. And the thing with, there's so much stuff you can do for free, right? Like you can listen to this podcast, you can read books, you can read blogs on the internet, you can watch YouTube videos. There is an immense amount you can do for free. But what I notice is that when you find a person who has been there, who has done that, and you can commit to, say, working with them and learning from them, you're putting skin in the game, because you're actually most likely investing money in that, right? And if you invested money in something, you're more likely to be more invested in getting a return from that. But also you're paying to accelerate your growth, because that person who you're now working with or who you're learning from, they have learnt their skill set over a matter of God knows how many years. For me, it's been 10 years now that I've been working on this stuff, right? So any person who works with me, they're paying me a small fraction of what I personally have paid to learn in the past 10 years. I think I've spent close to $40,000 now on personal development and various different courses, programs, trainings, and business programs have been weaved into that as well. So, a client pays nowhere near that, right? But they're still getting access to me, who has learned all of those things, who can now transfer that through to the client, as long as it's relevant. Of course, you're not just going to teach them stuff for the sake of it. It needs to be relatable to what they're trying to achieve.
I agree. I so much agree. My case, for example, so I have my clients, so I work very specific area and group. So I'm in I'm post 40 now.
Yes.
It's been 20 years, 2 decades of just pure IT work experience that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And, so my clients are very specific into a certain group.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely agree on what you're saying. It's not about, the freer stuff. It's basically people are paying to get the knowledge that you have, but more importantly, your time and experience as well, because
Mm-hmm.
that's the key aspect. Because otherwise, there's a lot of stuff you can get it from free, but the time, the experience is something different. Importantly, is one-to-one catering for that
Yeah,
person,
exactly.
understanding what you're going
Exactly.
through. And I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
cater everything just for you now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's customization. Right now, it's a bit different if you work in a group capacity. If you offer group coaching, you would set the outline for the whole group. But in one-on-one, it's really beautiful. And that's what I say to people who are coming on board or looking at coming on board to work with me. I say, we first of all have a call where I just learn as much as I can about you and your current situation right now and where you're wanting to go, or if you don't know where you're wanting to go, that still helps to pave a pathway forward. And that then is what we spend our one-on-one sessions working on. So that you're so right, like you can spend so much time soaking up all of the free content, and there is nothing wrong with that. But there does come a point where if you really want that accelerated change and the accountability to do so, then investing in something deeper is so beneficial for you.
True. Absolutely. No doubt about that. I mean, that's the whole idea. I always tell this to people that, you always have Google, you come to me for one-on-one connection. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How I can sit with you and help you with your specific scenario. Otherwise, you always have Google.
Yeah, I think that's such a funny statement to make, because literally I have one client who I think she's actually in her 50s, and she has started up her first ever business since her and I have been working together from the start of last year. And she's having a bit of trouble at the moment trying to set up a Facebook shop. And she was sending me messages back and forth, trying to get me to explain to her over Messenger what to do. And I just wrote back and I said, please search this into Google. It will tell you what to do. Like, that'll be more helpful right now than me, because I'm not looking at your screen, but we can talk more specifically if you're still stuck in our session in a few days' time. But honestly, Google will be able to help you with that one.
Yeah. Otherwise, that would be too customizable then. If you'll have to start at that level with how to type in and stuff. Fantastic. Let's move to the next point here. So, actually, on the continuation. So, we used to meet before COVID. It was all people, and people used to connect and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And it was a little easier. Sometimes few people had challenges as well, who with respect to confidence and other things. Now, my question is post COVID now, and it's going to be digital in many areas. Even forget COVID for a moment. The world is anyways shrunken in terms of the digital age, right? Like we are now talking, I'm in Australia, you're in New Zealand, and you might be doing podcasts in several different countries. I do the same. So, irrespective of post or pre-COVID, the point is that how do you think how to communicate effectively, in this digital age that we have? What are your thoughts on that?
Great question. There are so many different ways, and I think it's all, it starts with practicing different ways, different mediums, and then finding what works for you. But I notice as well, in terms of right now, everyone feels more rushed, like we've got a lot more to do. We feel a lot more busy and maybe even more frazzled by what we're trying to accomplish in our day. So a few hours ago, I read The 4-Hour Work Week. And that book was really helpful for me in terms of my work communication, because what it taught me is how to be really specific, be really succinct. So if you're emailing a person I have a few points on email, but anyway, if you're emailing a person and you're trying to set up a call with them, put as much detail as you can in that email. So as in, check your own calendar first. Find 2 or 3 of your days and hours that you have gaps available and put that in that original email. You have no idea how many back and forths people can have just trying to find a time that works. And even taking that another step further, you can use Calendly and you can set up your own calendar and you can just send others the link and then they can scroll through themselves and find a time that suits. I know that that's what I did with you to book in to be on this podcast. And that's what I do now for my own podcast to have guests book in, because it's so much easier and it's a great way to communicate. You just put all the information in there once. That's going to be the same for everybody. And then all you have to do is reach out with the more customizable stuff. So that's one thing, is be specific as you can in your communications. And what I used to do when I was still working full-time but working virtually is I would have little post-it notes, which are not the most efficient way, to be fair, but anyway, it worked at the time. Have little post-it notes on my desk of my different co-workers' names. And what I would do is anytime something came up for me that I needed to talk to that specific co-worker about, I would put it down on this list. But I would never talk to them just for one thing. So what I would then do is when my list got to 3 or 4 things, that's when I would talk to the person. And I recommend pick up the phone, have a call with somebody. We're so good these days at avoiding conversations, and that's a wider part of the communication. We would rather email, but sometimes it's just way faster, way more efficient, and it's actually going to give you the better quality answer if you can just have a phone call about it. And I think the idea of having a phone call with somebody or setting up a Zoom, but if it's not something that requires a Zoom, still have a phone call. I feel like because we have the capacity for Zoom now and video conferencing, a lot of us in our workplaces have totally forgotten about phone calls, and so everything becomes this big deal where we have to book it in, we have to find a time, but you can be really sneaky and get into somebody's day just by giving them a phone call. And if they don't pick up, say, hey, call me when you get 5. I always follow up a phone call with a text, and I try to put some context in there around how much time it's going to take them. So even if I think it might actually take 15 minutes, I'll probably say 5, because then they're more likely to actually call me, So there's just little things that you do in there. But the main thing is trying to be succinct as you can. So like I said originally, have that email with details in there of like, hey, I want to have a call with you. Here's some times, here's some options, and this is what we want to talk about. And then for me, having those post-it notes where I would write a list of 2, 3, 4 things before I even speak to the person, just to make it worthwhile. And also it's less of an interruption to me and my day by doing that, instead of calling somebody or emailing somebody every time I have one tiny question. You can just be more succinct and do all in one go.
Interesting. The post-it, yes, quite interesting, because for sure I know that, when we work, or let's say we are doing whatever things, and a thought pops up in the head, and I'm like, oh, I need to talk to Janelle regarding this. And you're absolutely right. If I just take that, and it might not be the most important thing, it's just some thought popped in. And I think it's a good thing that you write that thing down. It's not that I don't want to talk to you. It's just that it's going to divert my
It
whole
does.
thing, right?
Yeah,
It's probably break. Exactly. And so I think it's a good way that you mentioned that write 2, 3 things down. And eventually you'll be like, oh, you know what? I really want to talk to Janelle now. It's a 3 to 4 things in my head. I better get it out. And the second benefit that happens with this thought process is that when you write down this thought on the piece of paper, it's probably not going to bother you much.
For sure.
And, it's out of your system and you can continue with your routine work. And, I like that. This really good technique that, many people can use. And I think post-its are good. I still love them.
Me too. Literally, I've got a stack of them right here.
Because I still love them. And, I also use them for colors for some specific reasons.
Yes.
So I know whom to do what. But yeah, the other thing is I agree with you on the fact that when you try to connect with somebody on email or something, especially if you're setting up a meeting, give as much as information, at least about your calendar. In organizations, you can also see others' calendar and so on and so forth. Give them options so that you will avoid a lot of
Back and
back and forth.
forth. Yeah.
I agree. And yes, phone calls are good. And even for organizations now, they have these chat messengers sort of their
Yeah.
own. I'm pretty sure they can call up via that. Like I do that with my team because sometimes it's so boring to type. And I tell them that, hey, you know what? My fingers are hurting me now. So I'm going to call you. Is it okay? It will definitely improve the level of communication in
Yeah.
this digital world. Thank you.
Yeah. I also think it's important to be aware of your focused work time versus your distracted work time, right? In a virtual world, it's really easy for us to book our whole day with calls with people discussing things, and before we know it, we've run out of 8 hours worth of time and we actually haven't done any solid work. So we're having these meetings and these discussions and we're making more work for ourselves, but we're not actually doing the work. And so something I think that you, as another benefit of, say, this post-it note situation, is you can also set your own standard where each day you need a solid X amount of hours where you're actually head down, distraction-free, doing solid work. And then in the afternoon, or every person's different. So for me, I work really well in the morning. So my solid work should be in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I just want to have a nap. I'm quite lazy. My brain's done by then. So that'll be the good time to have those conversational catch-ups or meetings or things like that, writing notes to then deliver on the following day in that focus time. And so that could be something really beneficial to add to it as well, is just having this awareness of, well, if I'm writing down all these notes to call these people, is there a specific time of the day that suits me to try and call them or try to have these conversations where it's going to be the best use of my brain power at this time? That is something that really helped me, and something I think that in teams is really beneficial to be thinking about our energy and when we are best at doing certain things, so that we can really utilize and maximize on our most efficient brain power for actually doing solid work rather than wasting it away on just conversations.
I agree. I think in my calendar, like for example, now every day from 8 a.m. to 9 is like blocked for me. And then I have another block in my calendar, which is from 3 to 4 p.m. So this way, I know that every day morning it's blocked. So that's the time I go through my emails. That's the time I go through my meetings and see and stuff like that. Of course, I'm adjustable, but at least
of course. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Let's move on to the next one. And for people, why I'm looking down is I have my questions here. All right. The next one is basically, there's a lot of people, they feel that lack of confidence, right? When they talk to senior management. Like you gave an example with your client earlier, right? So now my question to you is, what are your suggestions that, somebody can take up, some key points that someone can focus before going to the senior management if they feel that there's a lack of confidence within them?
Beautiful. Sometimes there's varying reasons, right? Like with my client that I shared before, she had put this manager on a pedestal and she had made this idea in her head that the manager was better than her. And I've done that before in my career as well. And that is not a good frame of mind to be in. So first of all, being aware of like, why am I feeling low confidence when it comes to engaging in conversation with this person or with management. So being aware of why that is, and then reminding yourself that they're just another person, really humanizing the conversation you're about to have or the person you're about to engage with. That instantly helps you just to calm down a little bit and realize, what, we're all just people. We're all just humans, okay? And so that's one thing. Another thing that can really help you in feeling more confident is to be prepared. And it's so funny because probably 5 years ago, I would have rolled my eyes at myself saying that. But now I've had a lot more practice. And the reality is, when you're more prepared for something, you feel more confident because you have spent the time, and it doesn't even have to be a lot of time, but like what you do in your 8 a.m. space is you've looked at the day ahead, you've been able to get your head around some of the conversations you're about to have, some of the work you're about to do. So you've been able to prepare yourself. Being prepared helps you to be equipped for whatever could happen. So some of those things that you might want to be preparing, if you're about to propose something, an idea that you've had to your manager, what's the benefit to the company? How is the company going to make more money or save more money by taking on this idea? Even just spend a few minutes thinking about these different angles of different questions that might pop up, or things that can make what you're talking about more valuable. Right? So you want to do that. And something that also can give you more confidence going into any discussion or any meeting is knowing what the expectations are. Why are we here? That is something that I've been practicing intentionally probably for almost the past 12 months now. And it is, when I'm going into a meeting, what is the intention for this meeting? Okay, is the intention that we're just brainstorming? Is the intention that we are wanting to put together a proposal to go and sign a new client? Are we trying to completely shift one whole division of the company? Like, what is the intention for this meeting? So that way, when you leave in 30 or 60 minutes time, you know that you have met that intention before you're leaving. And having that set at the start, even if you just know within yourself, but setting it to the whole team does help as well. I love doing that with people. Hey, just reminding everybody, we're here today. This is our intention for being here. And at the end of the day, this is what we want to be leaving with, right? So that's part of that being prepared as well. And that can help you to build that confidence in yourself. So I guess the tips that I'm sharing here, these are really practical things, and they're less about you as a person. I'm not saying like stand tall, put your shoulders down, talk really strong. Of course, you can do all of those things, right? But then there's the underlying stuff as well that can have such an impact on how you show up. And being prepared, if you feel organized and like why you're here, you're more likely to naturally sound better with your voice and speak more confidently or more persuasively than what you would be otherwise. Another thing that I shared before, what I do with my client, is to practice the conversation. If there is something that you're really nervous about, if you're going into a meeting and you've realized, it's been 2 years since I've had a pay rise, I really need a pay rise. Get prepared, figure out all the reasons why your work deserves a pay rise. I don't personally like attaching your own value as a person to the pay that you take home each week. It should be the value of the role that you're doing. So what is the value of that role? Get prepared in that, and then practice the conversation and give yourself some random questions that could possibly be thrown at you. If the manager asks, well, your division didn't hit their KPIs last year, so why would we give you a pay rise? Things like that. Practice this in conversation. And yes, you might feel nerdy, you might feel really awkward doing it, but just give it a go. And that's going to give you a bit more comfort and a bit more of a natural flow as you go into the real life conversation. And then the last thing is take deep breaths. Okay. So just before you go in, give yourself 5 seconds to pause. You've already done all of the work. You've already done all of the preparation. You've practiced the conversation. You're feeling good about what you have to put on the table in this meeting. And now you just need to pause, take some deep breaths, and tell yourself, I've got this.
I think that these are some very, very practical points. I completely agree on one of the aspects is that, yes, body language and your voice and all those things matter. But if you aren't prepared, if you don't know what the content is, if you don't know what you're going to speak well, all those things are not going to matter. Because yes, you might go like this, and then you're gonna go down because you don't know. So I think that that's true, that you got to be prepared. And one of the things that you beautifully mentioned, two actually, that I took away key points was, number one is that think about what's the benefit for the company, right? And I tell this to my team as well, is that this is something I learned in a very different manner, is you always think about the project. The decision will be taken for the benefit of the project and not for an individual. And I think that really helps. And the second thing, what you mentioned, is during your appraisals and the salary hikes and stuff. So it's not about you in a way; it's the role, whether you've done that justice or not. So that's quite important, because this sets two things. It sets you apart from that work, so now you can look at the work in a different perspective. You're not attached to it.
Correct.
And second aspect is, of course, you're going to be now better prepared, I feel, because once you detach, because a lot of people have this habit of actually attaching the work to them. What I mean is that problems, it's their problem, it's them, and so on and so forth, and they keep feeling low. I think that's a good point. You detach it and focus on the issue.
Yeah. So right now, if you treat your job and the value of your job like it's your value, I have so many people come to me and talk to me about, I need a pay rise. I'm worth so much more than this. And I say, it doesn't matter what you're worth. The reality is you could be worth millions and millions of dollars just as you are as a person, as a human, right? But this job you're doing isn't necessarily worth that. So you need to be able to communicate better the value of the job, or you need to be able to add more skills to the job that you're doing and make yourself more, I guess, indispensable as a person in the company. But that has nothing to do with you and your own personal value. Here's why. If you get turned down for that pay rise and you believe wholeheartedly you are worth so much more, I am worth so much more than what they're paying me, and they turn you down, you're going to feel like crap. Your self-esteem is going to be low, your self-confidence is going to be low, and you, unfortunately, have done that to yourself. Okay? Whereas if you can exactly separate it out and remind yourself, this isn't me, this isn't my human value that I bring to the world, this is the value of this role. Okay? That way, if they say no, you're going to feel less personally affected by it. And yeah, it'll still be dumb, but you're going to be able to think more strategically about, okay, well, what can I do to make this role more valuable in this company so that this role gets more money? And I'm the person who then benefits from that.
True. No, absolutely. I think you're correct, because now at that moment when they don't get, they will feel worthless, like crap you mentioned. And eventually they'll get into a very different zone of mind, which is going to just make a mess out more for them. Whereas if they start thinking in the other way, detach themselves, they have two options. Either they create value, or they probably go out and go somewhere where they get the money worth for their own skills. It's interesting thought. So fantastic. So confidence building, be prepared, get ready, understand, detach yourself from the the value of the company versus yourself, upgrade yourself, be ready, and go for it. I think that's interesting. All right, over to my second last question now. So the second last question is regarding emotions. I know radio is quite challenging in a way as well, right? Like any other job now, you're live there, right? Most of the time.
Yep.
And I'm sure things would happen up, down, and stuff, right? What are your suggestions, be it in any job, anything that you do? How do you handle emotions in challenging conversations? Because, or escalations or things like that.
This is such a good question and a great topic of conversation that I have had with many clients before, predominantly probably in their home life relationships, when things get heated and arguments happen and that kind of good stuff. But I guess still applies, especially in all matters of challenging conversations. And this is something that I learned over time, and it came to me from reflecting on conversations that didn't go well. When you thought, hey, I've got something I really need to talk about, I really need to get this off my chest, and then you take it to the person and it is just not well received, and then an argument and whatever else comes from that happens. So I was doing reflecting and trying to think, okay, well, these aren't things, sometimes you are going to have confronting conversations in life. Sometimes you are going to have to talk about things that you don't feel super comfortable sharing or being open about, but you know that it's for the greater good if you do so, and that things will be better, ideally, once you've had this conversation. So what I share with my clients and what I've learned for myself is give yourself permission to pause, and if things start to get heated in a conversation, this is one that does take some practice, is ask for a moment. Say, hey, things are just getting a little bit heated here, or I can't think clearly. Can I just have a moment just to recoup my thoughts, and then we'll circle back? And this is really interesting because people don't expect this and people aren't used to this. And so you might actually catch them off guard and they might think it's really weird. But the point is to give you a bit of space to be able to just clear your own head again, okay? So it's really hard for us to do that in the moment. So this is something that you're just, over time, now that I've shared this with you, you can slowly start to practice and implement it in your life anytime it comes to mind when you're in that situation and you realize, oh my God, I listened to that episode one day that said I can ask for a moment. I'm going to ask for a moment, okay? So ask for a moment, because we all feel like we have to respond straight away. And my partner says this to me all the time. When you get into certain situations, sometimes your body goes into fight and flight mode and you literally stop thinking straight and you start acting like a child, right? Like, I don't know what area of your brain it is off the top of my head, but the things you say after a certain point in confronting conversations just don't make sense and are a waste of time. So knowing that you can pause, you can take a moment, you don't have to respond straight away. That is a really great way for you to be able to collect your thoughts. And then the last thing on this is you never want to blame. If you have a confronting situation or something that you need to talk to another person about, whether it's a coworker or romantic partner or anyone, it's really easy for us as humans to instantly go into blame and I have to tell that person what they've done wrong. But when you approach situations like that, of course, that person is most likely going to feel attacked. And so they instantly are going to be protective and they're going to deflect the situation, which is just not a very productive conversation. So what I learned, again, while reflecting on previous conversations I'd had that really hadn't gone well at all, I came up with this idea of, okay, well, what if I practice taking responsibility first? In taking responsibility first, I challenged myself to talk about my feelings, because it's really hard to argue with feelings. If somebody had something that really upset me, instead of saying to them, you did this, you blah, 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 you, and of course you're going to then get an argument out of that, I would then say, hey, I just wanted to share with you, I've been feeling really like this, and when this happened, not when you did this, when this happened, it made me feel blah, 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 blah. And so I started practicing that. And this was about, 6 or so years ago now, I started practicing that. And a person who used to every single time make an argument with me over anything that I shared, for the first time heard me. And it was because I broke down my walls. I wasn't blaming. I was able to say, hey, I feel this way. When this happened, again, not blaming them, even though this happened because of them, I didn't have to remind them it was their fault. When this happened, I felt this way. And it was insane the level of open conversation you can have if you actually, like, even how I'm sharing this with you right now, like I'm talking slower, I'm talking a little bit quieter, and essentially like switching into trying to talk from the heart rather than trying to talk from the head. And in doing that, that then allows more open, constructive conversation to happen, and you're more likely to walk away from that conversation feeling like it is resolved in some way, and ideally that it's not going to happen again. It depends how vulnerable you want to feel, but I know from experience from myself and then also my clients who have tested this out, it works. Very vulnerable. You can feel quite sometimes emotionally drained after it. But I always say to myself, well, what would you prefer? Would you prefer being open-hearted and honest in a raw, authentic way? Or would you prefer the argument where you most likely avoid them and don't want to talk to them? Or, even if it's with a boss, you might just quit your job and go find a new one. That's not productive.
True. I think most of the people actually take the worst way as well is that they continue suffering like that. And that's more worse. And it's very interesting. Again, the same thing like when you mentioned is that when you speak to them, you don't have to use the word you. Probably you can do things that were said. And this conversation has made me feel like this. And because the moment you say you or I, then it's like, finger pointing sort of things, blaming each other. And then, in that scenario, in that situation, people are going to be defensive and they're going to not using the word you probably would help, and diverting the whole heat to the topic, the person.
It takes some practice, but it's good.
It takes some practice. I agree. I think it just definitely will take some practice. And for a lot of people who are listening this and will listen as well. Fantastic. But that's actually a way that you mentioned, because when the conversations get heated, most of the time people do not know how to close it in a way, or at least take it forward. Again, separating it out, the conversation from the person, if possible, is gonna help, and focusing on it, it's really gonna benefit. Wonderful. Wow, it's almost an hour now.
Wow, go us.
All right, I have the last question, and this is actually a common one that I ask my guests, is that do you have any recommendations apart from, my show, where basically any recommendations for people, in terms of podcasts and books, anything that can help build confidence for them?
Oh, for sure. My podcast, definitely. It's called Get Confident with Johnelle Hosking. Okay. So right now, at the time of recording, I think we're almost at 60 episodes. I do one every single week. And every episode is a practical piece of advice around helping you to gain confidence. So every episode you will leave with an XYZ, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3 steps to go and implement in your life that is really going to help you to be able to build that self-confidence. So that's the first one. The second one that comes to mind is actually that NLP course that I did, the Neuro-Linguistic Programming. In that course, there is a whole section on communication. And as we know, what we've discussed in this episode, communication can really help you to build your own self-confidence. If you know how to communicate and use words properly and effectively, you are going to feel more confident within yourself. So that is an awesome tool. And it was at the time, and I think it still is, quite affordable. Again, we've already touched on this. It will take a financial investment in yourself if that is something that you want to do. And the company that run that program, they're based in Australia, and they are called Wild Success. So you could just search Wild Success NLP into Google, our good friend, and it should come up for you there.
Sure. So what I'm going to do is, for all the users, I'm going to make sure that these links are ready. So link
Perfect.
to Janelle's podcast, the link to her website, of course. And I'm also going to Google and look out for Wild Success.
For sure.
And I've just typed it here for me, so I remember that. And I'm gonna add this information on the description. So feel free. Now, this is a request to all the viewers, and I always say this: please connect with lovely guests,
Hmm.
because it's the impact is not just you listening to it. For
Mm.
me, the impact would be when you take the next step, you know. And if you find that, yes, Janelle is the right person, I need to connect with her,
Mm.
feel free to do it. She will share with me the links where you can connect with her, connect with more about what she's doing, join her podcast, join her program. Make sure that you see the change that you want to see. Okay.
Mm.
So please do so. And with that, Janelle, I will pass it on to you. First of all, thank you very much once again for spending this lovely hour with me. And I'm going to pass it on to you for closing the session.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share and to discuss, some of these topics around self-confidence in the workplace. And, when you focus on building confidence in one area of your life, it doesn't just stay in that one area of your life, it transfers to every area of your life. So if you are a person who wants to be more confident at work, if you focus on growing that confidence within work, that is then going to spill out into other areas of your life as well. And there is nothing wrong at all. It's actually quite encouraged to have confidence in other areas, such as your own home and personal life as well. So take everything that you've listened to today, really soak it up. Listen to this episode multiple times. Thank you so much, Amit, for creating this platform where we can be on here today, speaking, sharing, and teaching others how to be more confident.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And thanks to all the viewers. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Cheers.